What up, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and today is a review I have decided to do ASAP, that being the 2014 film Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was this time directed by Matt Reeves, written by Mark Baumbach, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver, and starring Andy Serkis as Caesar and Jason Clarke as Malcolm. Dawn is the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which began 20th Century Fox's reboot of the original Planet of the Apes series. The film was released on July 11th, 2014 to mass critical and commercial success, earning over $710 million worldwide at the box office, effectively outgrossing Rise's box office gross. The reviews were highly positive, with many praising its visual effects, story, direction, acting, musical score, action, and emotional depth. And it even received an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects. The plot? It has been 10 years since the events of Rise, and by this point a man-made plague, which was created by James Franco, called the ALZ-113, but has now been dubbed the Simian Flu, has pretty much killed off almost all of the human population. But Caesar and his tribe of highly evolved apes have managed to thrive peacefully in the Mirror Red Woods near San Francisco, managing to create the perfect community without human interference. But that is until one day, they come across a small group of human survivors looking to reclaim lost power in the city. This confrontation ends up sparking an escalating series of problems between the two distinct communities, as both end up at each other's throats despite their desperate attempts to coexist in peace. After Rise became a surprise success, Fox immediately fast-tracked the development on a sequel, with director Rupert Wyatt and actor Andy Serkis set to return. However, Rupert Wyatt had chosen to decline the returning, as he felt he would be unable to have the necessary time to work on the film and have it out by its original May 2014 release. And so Matt Reeves was chosen to direct the film, and ironically, just months before the release, the film's release date was changed to July, thus allowing X-Men Days of Future Past to fill in its original date. According to Reeves, the original draft of this film, which was written before he was hired, was set much further in the future, with the apes having obtained the ability to speak almost flawlessly, and Caesar was to play a much smaller role. But Reeves thought it would be more interesting to explore Caesar's story at an earlier stage, and asked for permission to rewrite the script from scratch with writer Mark Baumbach. His request was granted, but only on the condition that he delivered the film on time for their scheduled release dates. I remember when I first heard that Matt Reeves was hired to direct this film, I was like, that guy who directed Cloverfield? What? But after having seen this film, I was honestly impressed by his direction. What makes him a great choice for this, is that he is actually a huge Planet of the Apes fan, so it is actually very fitting that he was chosen to do this film, as it's always good to have a fan to come in and bring something new to a franchise they loved for so long. And whilst the first film's music was composed by Patrick Doyle, who I do not know jack shit about, the score for this film was this time taken over by the brilliant Michael Giacchino, who, like Reeves, is also a huge Planet of the Apes fan. Not some bits aren't exactly memorable, but there are several moments that are pretty good. It even makes you want to hum to it sometimes. But don't worry, Chiquino does get better when he does the score for the next film, War. I also remember when this movie came out, I honestly expected it to be an action-packed movie. But when you watch the movie, it isn't. It's more like what I could describe as a character-driven Shakespearean neo-Western drama, as it focuses on Caesar's struggles to maintain leadership over his tribe, and is ultimately being put to the test of whether he truly is a worthy leader for his tribe. And even looking at the film's poster, which shows what looks like Caesar on horseback in a big battle that devastates a bridge behind him, that almost feels like a lie. And even when looking at the trailer, you'd expect Gary Oldman to be the villain, but it turns out he is not. It turns out that, spoiler alert, the real villain of this film is Koba, a scarred bonobo ape, and Caesar's trusted lieutenant, who is this time played by Toby Kebbell. You know, Doctor Doom in the 2015 Fantastic Four reboot. But we'll get to that some other time. When the humans show back up, Koba immediately reverts back to his old life, fiercely paranoid of a possible human attack on the apes, and ends up questioning Caesar's actions, even accusing him of loving the humans more than the apes. If you ask me, I think Koba will, years from now, go down as one of the very best antagonists in the Planet of the Apes franchise, because of his fierce hatred towards humans. He sees everything in a black and white way. He sees all humans as bad and wants to see them imprisoned or dead. I believe Toby Kebbell does an amazing job as Koba. He plays him perfectly as this tragic villain whom you do feel sorry for what he had been through in his life before meeting Caesar. But as he lets his paranoia and hatred consume him, you are utterly shocked by what he ends up doing. Like one scene when he offers Rocket's son, Ash, to kill these two defenseless elderly humans as payback. But Ash instead puts down his weapon, arguing, Caesar wouldn't want this. And you just really feel for Ash. He feels guilt-ridden. You're just like, aww. But then Koba suddenly murders Ash in cold blood. I was like wide-eyed by that scene, and that was when I lost all sympathy for Koba. Andy Serkis once again gives an outstanding performance as Caesar. You truly get behind him in his struggles to keep the peace. Serkis will truly be remembered for these films, and I believe Caesar will go down in history as one of the best movie heroes ever made today. We also have Maurice and Rocket returning, both once again played by Karen Konoval and Terry Notary. Here, Maurice acts as Caesar's voice of reason in this film. Maurice is still great to watch. I thoroughly enjoy watching him in these films. And Rocket is great as always, although he does feel a bit sidelined in this film, but fear not, he does get to have some shining moments in the next film, War. Oh, and also, Caesar now has a wife named Cornelia. Get it? She is, to anybody's surprise, even mine, played by Judy Greer. But I'm sure none of y'all would have known that unless you watched the end credits. Oh, and Caesar and Cornelia also have two sons, the eldest being Blue Eyes, who is like you could say the up-and-coming heir to the throne. And the newborn, in this film his name is Milo, but in War it's changed to Cornelius. Why the change, I don't know, but just subtle little references to the original. As for the human characters, we have Jason Clarke as Malcolm, co-leader of the human colony alongside Gary Oldman. Jason Clarke does a good job here. He's a guy who is in a desperate situation to avoid a war and pleads with Caesar to allow them to fix up the water dam in order to restore limited power to the city. Of course, you may also recognize Jason Clarke as John Connor in 2015's Terminator Genisys. And of course, Terminator Genisys was supposed to launch a new trilogy, but of course we all know how that turned out. But anyway, next up we have Kerry Russell as Ellie, Malcolm's partner and a former CDC nurse. I remember Kerry Russell from that movie Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I didn't even know that was her. She looked so young in that movie. And yes, I did used to watch the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movies as a kid, and I still love those movies. The reason she's in this movie is because she had previously worked with Matt Reeves on the late 90s TV show Felicity, of which Reeves co-created. And next we have Gary Oldman as Dreyfus. Leader of the human colony. I'll say I will always enjoy Gary Oldman in whatever movie he is in. I loved him as Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogies. It's such a nice change. Nice thing to see him change from not being a villain again. He too is good in this film. He is not a straight-up villain in this. He is shown to be thrust into a position he honestly did not wish for, and is only wanting to protect his colony. And he does have a small moment where you do feel sorry for him because he lost his family in the initial viral outbreak. And finally, we have Kirk Acevedo as Carver, a former water worker who's in Malcolm's group. And I gotta say, Carver is such a fucking dick. Holds a fierce hatred towards the apes no matter what. And at one point, he selfishly brings up Ellie's dead daughter. Like, didn't you have a little girl? How'd she die? And then turns to Malcolm and says, or your wife for that matter. I was like, dude, bring up her dead daughter? Dick move, man. You know, sometimes I kind of wish the apes would just go up and give him an ass whooping to straighten him out. There's one moment when he says, I'm the asshole. No shit? I wouldn't be surprised if you were actually credited that way. Now you're probably wondering, where's James Franco? What happened to him? Well, apparently the filmmakers chose not to bring him back for the sequel after Rupert Wyatt dropped out of directing, and so his character Will Rodman had been written to have died from the viral outbreak years ago, the very virus he created in the first place. But he does make a short cameo in this, in the form of a video recording Caesar watches in one small scene. So there you go. We have James Franco in this movie, albeit in a very small cameo. But I really have to say, the CGI for the apes in this film have immensely improved since Rise. Here they are featured much more prominently in scenes that are set outdoors, especially when they're living in their ape village, which they had built in the Redwoods. Weta Digital has done an amazing job improving on the CGI. They look so real here that for several moments, I almost mistakenly thought I was watching actual apes in the film. And I gotta say, the village the apes had built in the woods looks really impressive, amazing. I love the village. I honestly believe something like that could actually be built by intelligent apes. It certainly shows us that these apes sure have kept themselves busy, pretty busy in the past 10 years. And goddamn, does that village look beautiful. During this one scene, I love the bit when Malcolm is walking alone up to the ape village to negotiate with Caesar, and suddenly a bunch of gorillas emerge, and Malcolm raises his arms up to show that he's unarmed. Love that bit when the gorillas sort of gang up on him like football jocks. Human, give us lunch money. But seriously, the next bit is when Malcolm tries to speak with Caesar. And by the way, I love the shot of Caesar standing on top of the rock column like some king. It just shows how much of a leader he's become when they all look up to him. There's a shot of Malcolm on his knees looking up to Caesar, or trying to negotiate with him. And he has all these apes surrounding him. That's a brilliant shot. The apes around him look so real. But one all-time favorite scene of mine is when Caesar and his tribe ride on horseback into the city, right up to the human colony's doorstep. They all look to be ready for battle. I love the war paint on Caesar's face. He looks really badass here with that war paint. But I love his speech when he makes his declaration towards the humans. Apes do not want war, but will fight if we must. Ape home, human home. Do not come back. I love that speech. He pretty much hits his point home to the humans, pretty much telling the humans to stay out of the redwoods, as it is the apes' home, or else they will go to war. Such a memorable scene, and it shows that Caesar's speech ability is certainly improved a bit much, but is still having a little trouble. But I really do love how he speaks. He sounds so authoritative, like a boss. Yeah, sure, it sounds like Christian Bale's Batman voice in The Dark Knight, but at least in this film, he has a good excuse because he still has trouble speaking, unlike Bale, who does it for some reason. But what's also great is that since many of the apes still haven't learned to speech yet, they use sign language very prominently here, and I love when they speak through sign language, which brings up the use of subtitles. It makes the silent moments involving the apes feel more powerful. My favorite line has to be when Caesar argues not to go to war, saying, "If we go to war, we could lose all we've built." Which is true, as he is trying to avoid a war, because as we've learned through history, wars tend to fuck that kind of shit up in a hurry. And as Caesar would argue, and how many apes would die? Which is a very powerful argument to make, as war only brings death and destruction to those who fight in it. It's actually no wonder why my father had forbidden me from going into war, enlisting in the army and going to war, because after watching movies about war, I don't think I would have survived it out there. And another scene I love is when Koba, finally at his breaking point, plays around with two humans named Terry and McVeigh. Wait, McVeigh and Terry. Huh. But anyway, Koba acts dumb to fool them, and then he playfully grabs one of their firearms and swings it around before suddenly out of the blue, shoots them dead. That's a great scene with such dark humor in it. At first you're like laughing as he fools them, but when he shoots them, you suddenly turn straight-faced. It's brilliantly done. Now, like many other Planet of the Apes films, Dawn has sub-themes and allegories for its story. This time it deals with the more modern themes of militarism and aggressive government regimes. This film focuses on two distinct groups, those being Caesar's ape tribe and a human survivor colony, who end up encountering each other and their desperate attempts to retain some form of peace between the two regimes. But in the end, paranoia and aggression takes over, leading to what would become a devastating war between the two species. Koba, fiercely distrustful of humans, decides to take over the ape tribe and practically militarize it in his intent to lead an aggressive attack on the humans, using fear to make others follow, much like what other past world leaders had used, whose names I will not mention for sensitive reasons, but you get what I mean. Now to say, much like how Rise feels like a sort of remake of Conquest, Dawn also feels like a sort of remake of Battle for the Planet of the Apes, but the similarities are much less obvious this time around. The most obvious similarity being that Koba is like Aldo in Battle, except done much better and has a much more crystal clear motivation. In a weird way, I kind of view both Dawn and War as almost feeling like a two-part reimagining of Battle, much like how I view both Captain America, the First Avenger, and the Winter Soldier as like a two-part reimagining of the 1990 original Captain America film by Canon Films. One thing I do like about this film is during its second half. It's gonna be a big spoiler in a way, so if you haven't seen the movie, turn us off and go watch it. You'll see what I mean, and come back to this video. Now in the film, after power is finally restored in the city, things seem to be going for the better for the apes and humans. It seems like peace could actually prevail. That is until Koba decides to orchestrate an assassination attempt on Caesar, and pins it on the humans, yelling, "Humans, kill Caesar! Burn Ape Home! Ape Home!" Thus, we do get a pretty cool shootout battle between the apes, led by the more militaristic Koba, and the human colony, to which the apes manage to overwhelm the colony and put the humans in cages, showing us a glimpse of what is to be the apes' oppressive nature towards the humans in the 1968 original. During the battle, there are some awesome moments where Koba is riding a horse while handling two machine guns. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool shot when he just fires those two firearms while on horseback. And another is where he also pulls a GTA 5 and hijacks a tank to ram down the colony doors. It's kind of like, oh god, Koba has found the GTA God mode. And yeah, to say, in this film, the apes begin to learn how to use firearms here. This is what I love about these new films. You could watch them as prequels to the 1968 original, but what's great about these films is that the events that are supposed to set up what's to come in the next film are actually mostly seen in the background. It takes a back seat for characterization and lets the stories flow naturally as the films progress. In one scene, there are two apes who are holding humans prison. They're in cages, and they're holding machine guns. The way they hold them, I don't know why, but I think they just look so cute holding those firearms. When you watch the movie, you'll see what I mean, but they look so cute how they handle them. It's probably just me. I just find it cute that way. But what I really love is that the final climax instead goes for a more Empire Strikes Back style confrontation between Caesar and Koba on an unfinished skyscraper, fighting over who retains leadership over the ape tribe. Meanwhile, Malcolm reunites with Dreyfus and others at the bottom of the tower, and Malcolm finds out that they had been planting C4 to blow up the tower on which the apes have gathered on. Thus, Malcolm tries to plead and reason with them to not do so, in an attempt to give Caesar more time to stop Koba, resulting in an argument between Malcolm and Dreyfus. Dreyfus argues that the apes are animals and attack them, or as Gary Oldman would do it in his screaming manner, "They're animals! They attacked us!" But he then reveals that the restored power had given them a chance to make radio contact with a military base up north, which is now already on the way to battle the ape problem, before he decides to sacrifice himself to blow up the tower. But it only barely shakes up the tower and barely scathes the apes. While recovering from the sudden explosion, Koba begins firing aimlessly at Caesar and the apes, almost killing Maurice. And when I saw Maurice fall down, I was like, "No, don't die, Maurice!" But thankfully he doesn't. He survives the movie. But finally, enraged, Caesar finally manages to take down Koba, declaring Koba as you. Koba is held dangling on a piece of ledge with a big height below him, and it tries to beg for Caesar to help him, going for the ape not kill ape, which is hypocritical. Caesar grabs his hand, thinks for a moment, and declares to Koba, "You are not ape," before letting him go to let him fall to his death. But despite this, Caesar is warned that the military is on its way to combat the apes, so Caesar decides to stay behind and lead his tribe into what will become a war, setting up what is to come in the next film, which is War for the Planet of the Apes. And I gotta say, it took me a while to get more into the movie, but after a while, I honestly fell more in love with this movie. I love it for what it's going for. It's a really good movie with a powerful story to it. So, overall, I would like to give Dawn of the Planet of the Apes a rating of 8 stars out of 10, because it is a very surprising follow-up to Rise. It perfectly continues Caesar's arc into being the leader of his growing ape community, and he's being put to test to prove whether he is a worthy leader. The story is intriguing to sit through. It shows both sides of the communities very well. There are no black and white villains in it. There are shades of gray in them. And the film has enough emotional depth in it to allow you to sympathize with not only the apes, but also the humans. And the film, I'd honestly call this movie as like the godfather of the Planet of the Apes series. it is certainly an amazingly brilliant film to watch, and a worthy installment I would happily welcome into the Planet of the Apes collection. Definitely a much better made film than the Tim Burton remake. So thanks for watching, ladies and gents, and until then, I'll see y'all next time. I will definitely be doing a review for War for the Planet of the Apes. So until then, I'll see y'all next time, and remember, apes together strong. See you then.